Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to this video where I'm going to just be talking about whatever ideas I have fresh off the bat right now. Um, well, the thing I've been doing, or we can say if we want to pinpoint something specifically right now, philosophically, psychologically, sociologically speaking, um, it's the idea which I've been writing about of equality and inequality, but see, and this idea can be distorted right away because we can assume certain things that we already know, but those things are not actually what I'm talking about, and it can lead to those things which we already know about, such as like equality in the way that we understand it, like social equality, and it has some of that, but it's not actually that. It's equality from a philosophical, metaphysical, reality driven, perspective. So um and to bring this point home about how things can be distorted, I was watching this video where they were basically talking about how uh, people assume that other people are smart or intelligent based on these like five habits. And the first one was hyperproductivity. The second one, I believe, was multitasking. The third one was isolation or solitude. The fourth one was excessive order. And the fifth one was perfectionism. And I was like, well, bro, hyperproductivity and there's two problems with hyperproductivity. First, you're associating hyperproductivity with intelligence, which it has nothing to do. And I don't think it has anything to do. On the contrary, I think if you're very busy all of the time, it may actually mean you're not smart, you're not intelligent, because you don't have things, you're not smart enough to have things under control, so to say, right? So that's the first problem with hyperproductivity. And the second problem with hyperproductivity is that you're associating it, or you're differentiating it, is what I meant to say, from multitasking. And essentially, they're the same thing, right? And there's another problem with the fourth and fifth one, which is excessive order and perfectionism, which again are the same thing. So we aren't actually talking about five different habits. We're talking about three different habits, and two of them are basically being repeated. Now, what's interesting here is that ChatGPT was basically saying that this is done because there's like a didactic purpose, or an more for like engagement on YouTube, right? So when you speak like this, when you dosify content, knowledge, information, right? Even when you repeat things, but from a different perspective using synonyms, it helps people remember it. And I mean, to a certain extent, sure it does, because I'm able to remember those five different. I mean, they weren't really different, but those five things, I'm able to remember those five habits from that video, right? Again, we're working with lists, which is very helpful when talking about certain things. Like, I'm gonna give you a list of one to 10, or one to five, or three things. Like Antinflas was saying, we have three things here: the first one, the second one, and the third one, right? And it's just saying nothing, saying a lot of things, but saying nothing. No, but I understand that again, I think I don't like that, but I see the value in it. And I also think that having an objective for people when you speak is is of essence, right? It's very important to tell people. Like, for example, when I just started this video, I don't know what I'm going to be talking about. That's like, and I'm very much like that. I'm comfortable not knowing what's going on. I'm like intellectually, mentally, right? Exploring, venturing out. I woke up today not really with a plan on what I was going to study, and I ended up, you know, like talk like into this like dosification of content, um, transparent persuasion, the illusion of which I might get into, but the illusion that, for example, propaganda doesn't influence me when you, again, when you're being transparently influenced. Like if I tell you, uh, I'm going to be persuading you now based, like if I'm completely transparent with you, that does, the fact that you know that doesn't take away the fact that I can still influence you. And people will believe that when they know that they're being influenced, they can no longer be influenced, right? Like they're immune to the influence. But knowing what doesn't account for the fact of the how, right? And it doesn't account for your subconscious. And it's very interesting because I learned that being meta aware of things, like knowing that you're being influenced, um, metacognition doesn't account for all of the mental processes going on, such as like the emotions that are being provoked and things like that, right? So for me, having an objective kind of takes away the fun in the adventure, right? So when there's no structure, I feel like you can really learn, right? Like let me give you an example. I was planning classes for next semester, and I went and I go, okay, so I have to use books, textbooks, or certain books, or a book at least in the subjects, right? That I'm going to give in the courses. And what I used to do before is I would literally grab like the 16 chapters of the book. And it's kind of interesting because a textbook, like an academic textbook, McGraw-Hill, things like that, Pearson, will usually have 16 chapters. And a semester is usually 16 weeks. So you can say it's kind of like a chapter per week, right? Um, and what I used to do is I would just take like chapter one, week one, chapter two, week two, chapter three, week three, right? And I would just go like that. And what happens when you do that, I mean, it's very practical. But let's say in week one, it's introduction, and chapter one is introduction. And then let's say week two, there's a certain topic and concepts, and chapter two deals with the same thing. But then now let's say week three is about epistemology, and chapter three is not about epistemology, it's about cultural differences or something like that. And you're like, well, this has nothing to do with that, but we're still going to see it because you're complementing. Again, you're exploring, you're venturing out, right? We're not really clear what this combination is supposed to do, but let's experiment, let's figure it out. And I think that makes real learning, or not real learning, but like learning, it makes it more potent, right? It optimizes learning because you don't know which way you're going to go. Now what I'm doing this time is not that. I literally went through each chapter and through each like week, and I basically match the week with the content, with the correct content, which that has another purpose, and that's to repeat and again like see the same thing in different ways and really learn, really bring the message home, which I think is beneficial as well. But if you were to ask me, gun to my head, which one is better, I would probably say not knowing what you're doing, right? Which I think is more fruitful because that's where potential is. But anyway, so that's the way I operate. I don't really like to work with an objective, but I see that it's very useful to have objectives. So like another idea that I can do is like like after I make a video or I write, go back to the beginning and then say, okay, this video is about this, right? So we're going to be making these 3 points along the video, blah blah blah. I don't know, something like that. But yeah, I see the value in that. But let me bring myself back to the idea, to the initial idea that I was making on equality and inequality, philosophically speaking. So equality here, see, this all started, and I think it's very important to explain the context because then you're able to situate yourself as listener or as viewer to what I'm talking about. What happened was that I saw this post on Facebook that said something like, um, What is something that shouldn't exist but exists, right? It's like a metaphysical, philosophical question, and it's a philosophical um, page on Facebook. And I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. Let me contribute to that. Let me think and let me contribute. But first, I don't want to contribute the same thing that others have said. So I read through the comments, and cliche ass comments and responses like people, God, I don't know, like stupid things. I was like, oh my God, like you guys, that's so basic, but sure, you're always going to find, I mean, and it's sure, sometimes I speak like that too, because before you have ideas, well, what's the first idea that comes to mind? The obvious one, the evident one. Sure, that's fine, that's valid. Start there, but don't stop there. Start there and keep going, right? Keep pushing yourself mentally and conceptually into what's next, what's after that. Okay, God, humans, then what? What else, right? So I was really trying to think outside the box for this one, and I was like, and I don't really remember how I came to it. Well, I remember because I've written about this and I've talked about this, I think, where I say it's so incredible how uh, in Spanish it's called excedente, in English it's called surplus, but like how you're able to make something out of nothing, right? It's so interesting. That idea for me is still so interesting, right? Like credit, let's say, which I know has logic, right? Credit is based on time, like I let you borrow 100, and over a year I accumulate certain credits, so it's like the price you're paying for the time that you have the money, things like that. I understand the logic, but it's still interesting. I mean, value, like the fact that I make a lot of shoes and you make a lot of milk, and I need milk and you need shoes, so we trade that. And then when you trade milk, a liter of or 2 liters of milk for some shoes, or however many liters for a pair of shoes, the fact that you receive the shoes and I receive the milk makes it more valuable than what we switch, right? Like, for example, if I have a bunch of shoes and I sell you and I trade you shoes for your milk, the milk that I get has more value to me than the shoes that I gave to you, right? And that extra, that surplus is so, it's so interesting, right? The way that businesses can, like, maybe make a demographic study of the city or the location in which they set up their business, and then you know people flock to their business and they make money, right? That's potential. Again, that's talking about all that stuff. So I said surplus. That's all I said. I said surplus is something that shouldn't exist but exists. And then I was like, I don't remember how I got to the idea of inequality, but I said basically like something like surplus creates inequality because you're getting something extra, right? It's not fair, it's not just, it's not right there philosophically, metaphysically speaking, it's extra, right? So that right away creates inequality, right? Philosophically speaking. And I just went down the rabbit's hole on that one, right? Then I started to, I wrote a text about it, about how even like uh inequality precedes, or the idea of inequality um may precede potential, I think, and how that may be the real principle, or the real precept behind dichotomies, right? Like how black and white, like this distinction, this difference, again, this imbalance, this inequality. Um, and then the idea of equality, right? How we try to have that which is just, right? But then if we always had that which was just, like all along reality, um, maybe there wouldn't be anything that would exist, because then there wouldn't be potential, right? And there wouldn't be like extra anything, right? So and then you may say, well, that this is where I was saying in the beginning, this could be distorted, because then you could interpret this as me saying something like, oh, so you're saying that inequality is inevitable and people are meant to be rich and people are meant to be poor. And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just speaking, I'm exploring a concept philosophically, right? So that's kind of interesting there, because yeah, you can see it like that. And I don't know. Yeah, that's basically that idea. What else can I talk about? Yeah, so New Year's is here. I think this is the second video right now of this 2026 playlist. um I've been, like I've mentioned already, planning some classes. I've also been looking into these concepts. Another concept that I've really been looking into is journalism. And I think I may prefer the Spanish word better because it has more richness to it. Like in Spanish, it's periodismo. And periodismo basically means like periodic, right? Like periódico, like a newspaper, right? Es un periódico because it's regular. So the news, right? Journalism is periodic. You see it every day, every hour, whatever. And just like the masterminds, the giants that have been behind all of this, from Freud's nephew, I think, I forget his name, but I think Goebbels from the Nazi Party had kept like a copy of his book in his shelf. I think his book is called Crystallizing Public Opinion, and there's another one I'm reading. It's called Propaganda, and I was having a debate with ChatGPT about the difference between propaganda and persuasion, and he was saying that propaganda is not the same as persuasion. But I ended up like, basically submitting him into admitting that they're basically the same thing, and the difference is really a moral difference, right? Like propaganda is like, whoa, no, like that's what the Nazis did, that's what the Catholic Church did, like that's what tyrants do, like we don't do propaganda. But then it's like, oh, what about campaigning for an election? What about public relations? What about influencing the masses or influencing your spouse? Oh, yeah, that we can do. And it's like, okay. And, I understand that there's like direct, aggressive, dangerous implications to propaganda, right? Like if those that are being influenced by propaganda don't follow the propaganda, they can be murdered, right? Like in North Korea, things like that. I understand there's a difference, right? But in essence, linguistically, there's no difference. It's just, what, again, moral, emotional undertakings or perspectives. um, but it's so interesting how, you can influence others through repetition. You can make campaigns. You can work with people. You can write a story, right? There's like categories, which, I've spoken on this, I've written on this, how a concept such as like, or a study such as, or it's not a concept, but yeah, like a topic, a subject, a study, excuse me, such as journalism or propaganda or public relations or marketing, has its own categories, concepts, limitations, exceptions, history. And within those, for example, categories or elements or characteristics, is the notion of storytelling, right? I'll give you an example. And I don't know. I was being told that I could have gone into publicity, maybe as a career. I would love to study journalism because it's the power. It's knowing the power of the words, which ultimately gives you the power to shape public opinion, right? And there's a reason for that. This guy was saying, I forget his name, but if you guys know, it's Freud's nephew. I think his name is Alfred Barnes or something like that. I don't remember, but um, yeah, his book "Crystallizing Opinion and Propaganda" are the ones I'm reading, and in it he was saying that before, kings were able to do whatever they wanted, right? Whatever the hell they wanted. So a king wrote history, wrote about events, talked about it, and you know his word was like the ultimate word. Like, like nobody was going to contradict the king or the queen or whatever. Nowadays it's a democracy. Or nowadays, I mean, look at world leaders. They're all like, they're all like so careful not to step out of place, because as soon as they make a mistake, it's like 50,000 people are angry, 100 million are angry, whatever, right? So like now who's in control are really the people. Well, you may say not in control militarily, physically, but I mean shame, humiliation, when you bring humiliation to your government, things like that, I mean that's still like badly seen. We have the international community. So anyway, we can argue about whether people are really in power nowadays or not, because I also think that they're really not. But they say anyway, the way to shape public opinion is through propaganda, is through these like mass campaigns, right? Which are very interesting because they can be done again, like I was saying, through a story. And let me give you that example. There was a business that opened up near my house, and a food joint, and I saw like an ad on Facebook for it, and it was just like oh food, and it had like 50,000 views or whatever, which they paid for. You pay for the views on Facebook, which I've done before, and I'm planning on doing in the future. Um, and that was it. And I think they ended up closing the business or something like that. And I was like, man, they wrote no story. It wasn't narrative. There was no narrative behind it. So what I would have done in their place is like made the first, probably like the first ad for 10,000 views, and maybe said, oh, we just opened up for business, and then make a second ad or a second commercial which for 15,000 views maybe said, oh, they're make something up like they're gonna close us down, or like we're running out of business. I don't know, like something dramatic, like sensationalist, something like that. And then a third one targeting maybe the rest of the people up to 50,000, saying no, like now we're in good place, like make noise, because that's ultimately a story is what people are going to remember, and they're going to, next time they're, a friend, someone is with a group of friends, and they're talking about pizza, if you saw that ad, or you're aware of what happened, just because you're exposed to all this social media stuff and ads on social media, you would be able to basically say, oh yeah, like I've heard of this pizza joint that, or this food place that whatever, whatever, right? And that's how things get spread, right? So again, it's about using your imagination. It's about being creative. It's about telling a story. I think a lot of the things that we see nowadays are, like my favorite movies are Wag the Dog. Check that movie out and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Wag the Dog with Robert De Niro, and check out Dirty Rotten Scoundrels with Martin Freeman and Batman's butler. I forget his name, but you know who I'm talking about, the old guy. And I also like American Fiction. So anyway, those movies exemplify what I'm talking about, which again is shaping public opinion, is choosing the right words at the right moment. It's knowing when to say certain things in a certain way, um, to shape public opinion, because ultimately that's what you're trying to do. And the history behind it, I mean, one of the many histories is from Julius Caesar, where I guess he started, and I posted about this actually, where he started like telling people about what the regiment or the government was doing to, I think, this other guy who founded the Gazette, La Gazette, I think, in France, to Joseph Pulitzer. And it's very interesting the fight that he had. Let me tell you, with William Hertz, right? So William Randolph Hearst, and Joseph Pulitzer went at it in the late 19th century in New York City for control of the newspaper monopoly, right? Basically, they wanted to influence. And William Randolph Hearst went as far as to like sit down with Hitler and things like that before 1939, I think in 1934 or something like that. But anyway, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, man, so that's what I'm saying. You gotta be able to control narratives and write stories, win the hearts of millions of people, ultimately, through a good story, because that's, again, what people are going to remember. They're going to remember drama, crisis, things like that, because that's what draws people out, right? If you hit people with logic all the time, um, you're going to lose most of the people, because most of the people are like zombies, right? They just want to feel things, right? So just I think it was Joseph Pulitzer who simplified the message, right? He was like a Henry Ford in a way. So like Henry Ford didn't create the assembly line. He didn't create, or I think he did, but he didn't create like the industry, just as Joseph Pulitzer didn't create, newspapers, radio, things like this, but they systemized it, or they systematized it. So they made it so that what was once part of the elite only, they made it available to the general public, right? And in order to do that, very interestingly enough, you have to systematize, or you have to systemize things, which is you need to be able to mass produce, right? Which was, I think, what Joseph Pulitzer did with newspapers, with the word, right? With the news. And that's the way that you yeah, shape opinion in a nutshell, or in a way. um so yeah, I think I'm going to be looking deeper into that, because all of those topics are very interesting. And just the fact that you can persuade transparently is so tongue in cheek, is so cheeky, is so funny, right? So how you can tell someone like, I'm going to be practicing this, because there's opaque persuasion and transparent persuasion. And opaque is infantile, it's childish, it's, I'm going to hide the fact that I'm trying to persuade you, right? Like a business, like a salesperson, right? Like, oh yeah, like this car is the best car out there, it's going to benefit you so much, and you really, that may or may not be true. What you want to do is sell the car, right? So I think transparent persuasion is more in your face. It's more adult, like ChatGPT was saying. It's more, and it may even be paradoxically a way to influence a person, because what you're saying, you're not insulting the person's intelligence. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to try to persuade you that equality and inequality can be treated as philosophical concepts, and at the end you decide if it's true or not. You're giving people autonomy, and that's the best type of persuasion, when people believe that they have chosen something on their own accord. And that's actually the only way in which you shape public opinion, and you shape other people's perspectives, by them think. What's the difference between them making a decision on their own accord, and thinking they're making a decision on their own accord? It's the same thing. Metaphysically, it's the same thing, right? So that's what it boils down to, yo. Okay. So anyway, that's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay. Happy New Year. Bye.